Hello students. So today in this class we are studying the invasion and metastasis of cancer. So what do you mean by invasion? Invasion is nothing but spreading of something from one part to the other, that we call it as invasion, and metastasis is nothing but spreading from one region to other region with the help of any circulation by entering into systemic circulation or lymphatic spread. Then we call it as metastasis. If that means in invasion only the surrounding tissues will be affected. When coming to metastasis, it may cause the spread of any tissue or cancer cells from the site of origin to distant places, that we call it as metastasis. So in this class we are going to study what is invasion and metastasis. Okay. And so local invasion, it is also called as direct spread. Why? Because it spreads to the surrounding tissues. So that is the reason we call it as direct spread. And when coming to benign tumors, so you already know that what are benign tumors. So benign tumors are nothing but the tumors will be having this slow growth rate, and they are like encapsulated, and they'll not cause damage to the surrounding tissue. Only one thing is they cause compression of the surrounding tissue, right? So it is encapsulated, so it causes the expansion. It does not invade to surrounding tissues, but only thing it is, because of its expansion of size, it causes compression of the surrounding tissues. It does not show any invasion metastasis, but it causes compression or in difficulty to the surrounding tissue. Okay. And coming to these malignant tumors, so they are also enlarged by expansion. So unlike these benign tumors, these malignant tumors, they undergo invasion and metastasis. Okay. And they are not completely encapsulated, like and they are not well differentiated. They are partially encapsulated. Examples include follicular carcinoma of thyroid. So these were distinguished from these benign tumors by local invasion and direct, that is, and metastasis. That means these malignant tumors only undergo this invasion and metastasis, whereas benign tumors, they doesn't undergo any invasion and metastasis, but they cause compression of the surrounding tissue. Okay. So how does this tumors invade? So how does this spread to surrounding tissues? So how does it takes place? It takes place through the route which is very less resistant. That means where there is more resistance, that cannot easily pass, right? So these tumors invade via the route of least resistance. So where there is least resistance, through that route, these tumors starts invading. And they doesn't have any anatomic boundaries. That means where there is no anatomic boundaries are there in that regions, it will first choose to invade. So especially they extend through tissue spaces, lymphatics, that is lymph nodes and lymphatic vessels and blood vessels, spaces, and they also penetrate a bone by growing through nutrient foramina. So they also can enter into this bone through nutrient foramina. So these are the main routes through which these tumors invade. And they also invade through thin-walled capillaries. Why? Because they offer very much less resistance. So as there is less resistance, they pass mainly through these thin-walled capillaries and veins than thicker arteries. As these arteries will be having thick layer, they cannot easily penetrate through the arteries. So mostly they will penetrate through thin-walled capillaries and veins. And dense compact collagen, elastic tissue and cartilage. So they offer so much of resistance. So because of that, it is very much difficult for the tumors to get invaded. So this cannot easily invade, or they cannot easily enter through compact collagen, elastic tissue and cartilage. So mainly and easily how can through thin capillaries and veins compared to arteries. Why? Because arteries are thick-walled arteries. So they cannot easily enter into the arteries. And other tissue spaces, lymphatics, blood vessels, and spaces, and they also can enter into the bone with the help by passing through nutrient foramina. So these are the regions through which these tumors can invade. And then coming to metastasis, as we already said that metastasis is also called as distant spread. So what is meta? Meta is nothing but transformation. Stasis means residence. So they get transformed to the other region which is not the tissue of origin. So they'll spread from one region to a distant region. So that is the reason they were called as metastasis, and it is also called as distant spread. Okay. So how do we define this metastasis? It is defined as spread of tumor by invasion in such a way that discontinuous spread of tumor are formed at the site of lodgement. So that is site of lodgement is nothing but, so this is the tissue of origin from where the new tumor is formed. So it may spread to distant region where it go and gets undergoes lodgement. So that we call it as metastasis. So these were the two important features like metastasis and invasiveness in order to distinguish between these tumors and benign tumors and malignant tumors. Why? Because benign tumors, it doesn't undergo invasion and metastasis, whereas these malignant tumors, they undergo invasion and metastasis. So we can use these two as a differentiating features for malignant and benign tumors. And then all the malignant tumors will undergo metastasis except glioma of CNS, that is central nervous system, basal cell carcinoma of the skin. So except these two, remaining all can undergo metastasis. All the malignant tumors can undergo metastasis. So generally, whatever the tumors which were growing aggressively and rapidly growing, so that kind of tumors will be undergoing to metastasis. Whereas benign tumors, as their growth rate is very less, so they cannot undergo metastasis. Only aggressive and rapidly growing tumors undergo metastasis. So this is all about introduction of metastasis. So what are the different routes of metastasis that we are going to discuss now? So metastasis, as I said, that they will be spreading from one tissue of origin to distant spaces. So for that spreading, it requires a medium in order to travel from here to there, right? So how does it spread? With the means of certain routes. So mainly we'll be discussing three types of spread. First is lymphatic spread, and the other is hematogenous spread. Lymphatic spread is through lymphatics, lymph nodes, lymph vessels. Hematogenous spread is through blood vessels like arteries and veins. So for that we call it as hematogenous spread. And third is spread along body cavities and natural passages. So we call by spreading through some body cavities, and natural passages include transcelomic spread along epithelium lined surfaces, spread via CSF, that is cerebrospinal fluid, and implantation. So this is a third route of transmission or third route of metastasis. So we'll be discussing each one briefly. So first is lymphatic spread. So in generally, lymphatic spread will be taking place in carcinomas, whereas hematogenous spread will be taking place in sarcomas. What is carcinoma? In the last class we have discussed. Carcinoma is nothing but tumors of epithelial origin. Sarcoma is tumors of mesenchymal origin. So carcinoma spread via lymphatic route, whereas sarcoma spread via hematogenous route. Okay, and then so it can be of two different ways that lymphatic spread will be taking place by two methods. First is lymphatic permeation, and second is lymphatic emboli. What do you mean by permeation? Permeability. Permeability is nothing but ability to pass from one region to other. So that we call it as permeability. So the walls of lymphatics are readily through a membrane, right? So here what is the membrane? The membrane is lymphatic vessel wall. So lymphatic wall will act as a membrane through which the spreading of tumor cells takes place from here to there. Okay. So the walls of lymphatic are readily invaded by cancer cells and may form a continuous growth in lymphatic channels called lymphatic permeation. So if you consider this as the lymphatic vessel, so this is the surrounding tissues or tumor cells. So first they will spread around this vessel wall of this lymphatics, and they gain access, and from that vessel wall they gain access entering into the lymphatic vessel. So once it entered into the lymphatic vessel, there it undergoes replication, and there it will be continuously spreading in the lymphatic vessels. So that we call it as lymphatic permeation. Okay. So lymphatic permeation is nothing but ability of these tumor cells to move from one region to other with the help by passing through a membrane. Here the membrane, what is the membrane? Lymphatic vessel wall acts as a membrane. So by passing through that, it will gain access into the lymphatic vessel. So once it entered into the lymphatic vessel, what does it do? It undergoes continuous or rapid replication, thereby causes spreading to the entire body through this lymphatic vessel. That we call it as lymphatic permeation. Okay. And now lymphatic emboli. What do you mean by emboli? Embolism, thrombus. So this you have discussed in, maybe you have heard about these two terms. Embolus is nothing but something which is stick to some vessel wall. Once if it gets dislodged from that and moves to the other region, that we call it as embolus. Embolus is nothing but any mass which is sticked to any particular part. If it gets dislodged or gets removed from that site and gets entered into circulation or entered into any lymphatic circulation, or it may be hematogenous circulation, whatever it may be. So if it gets dislodged from the site of origin and enters to other region, then we call it as embolus. So the malignant cells which were there, if they detach from one region to form this tumor emboli, and then it is carried along the lymph to the draining lymph nodes. So that we call it as lymphatic emboli. This tumor emboli, once it enters the lymph node at its convex surface and it gets dislodged or enlarged in the subcapsular sinus where they start going. So once if it is dislodged from here, so it may enter into the subcapsular veins, subcapsular sinus, and there it starts growing or replicating. Later, of course, the whole lymph node may be replaced and enlarged by metastatic tumor. So once it starts dislodging there, once it starts replicating and growing, so by continuous growing, what does it will do? It will replace the complete lymph node. Complete lymph node will be replaced by this malignant cells or tumor cells. So that we call it as lymphatic emboli. In this picture, you can see this regional nodal. Okay. So again, this is of different types. Regional nodal metastasis. Regional nodal metastasis. That means these nodes, these were like nodes will be formed in this axillary region. So from the breast to axillary region, these will get spreaded by forming some regional nodes that we call it as regional nodal metastasis. Even in thyroid to lateral cervical lymph nodes. So from thyroid, it enters into the lymphatic circulation, and from that lymphatic circulation, it causes accumulation of these tumors in the cervical region. If there is like carcinoma of breast, if it is there, once it enters into the lymphatic circulation, it will enter into the axillary lymph nodes. So this from here to here, it is spreading. That we call it as axillary lymph nodes by forming regional nodal metastasis. And then retrograde metastasis at unusual sites. Retrograde is nothing but if there is any obstruction by something, it will make another passage to get entered. So example includes metastasis of carcinoma prostate to subclavicular lymph nodes, metastatic deposits from bronchogenic carcinoma to axillary lymph nodes. And then lymph nodes in the vicinity of tumor perform multiple roles. So whatever the lymph nodes which were there in the tumor region, it will act as initial barrier and it causes the destruction of tumor cells and will later provide fertile soil for growth of tumor cells. So initially it will act as barrier and immediately whenever it is entered, it will try to destroy that. And even though then as it is still surviving, then what does it will do? It will provide some fertile region for the growth of the tumor cells. So this is all about lymphatic spread. So lymphatic spread is nothing but spread of tumors through lymphatic route. That we call it as lymphatic spread. It takes place by two methods. First is lymphatic permeability. Second is lymphatic emboli. Lymphatic permeation is nothing but they will first they'll come closer to this vessel wall of lymphatic vessel wall and they get invaded and enters into the lymphatic vessel and may thereby causing spread over there. And lymphatic emboli, so whatever the tumor cells or tumor tissue is there, it will get dislodged from that region and it gains access into the lymphatic vessel and gets deposited in the lymph node. So once it is entered into this lymph node, it will undergo growth and replication. So once it is increased in size or expanded, At last, finally, it will completely replace this lymph node with this tumor cells. So that is lymphatic emboli. And regional nodal, it is about the examples. Regional nodal metastasis is nothing but from one region, nodes will be formed that will be spread to the other region through lymphatic region. That is from breast, from carcinoma breast to axillary lymph nodes. Retrograde metastasis, subclavicular lymph nodes. And initially, whatever these lymph nodes are there, first they'll act as barrier, they will not allow the tumor cells to enter. So once that barrier was damaged, it gains access into that. So once it is entered our body, our lymphatic cells will try to destroy that. Even though it is still surviving, then it will provide fertile soil for the growth of tumor cells. So this is all about this lymphatic spread. And then hematogenous spread. So here the route of transmission is through blood-borne metastasis, and it is mainly seen in sarcomas, that is tumors of mesenchymal origin compared to carcinomas. So here sarcomas will be undergoing this hematogenous spread. So most of the sarcomas will be spread through hematogenous spread only. Exceptions include spleen, heart, and skeletal muscle. They to that region, this hematogenous spread may not take place. And not only that, spleen will act. Spleen unfavorable site for the metastasis of this hematogenous spread. So why? Because it will cause damage to that, or it will kill that. It will try to it will stop the growth, or it will inhibit the growth of these tumor cells. So spleen is unfavorable site. And then systemic veins drain blood into vena cava from limbs, head and neck and pelvis. Therefore, cancer of these sites more often metastasis to the lungs. So systemic veins, so these will drain blood into vena cava, that is nothing but from to the heart, from hands and legs, head, neck and pelvis. So any cancer of these sites may often metastasis to the liver. So if there is any tumors in the limbs, head, neck and pelvis, as they again get entered into the heart, so they may metastasis into the lungs. So through systemic veins. And then portal veins. So portal veins drain blood from the bowel wall, spleen, pancreas into the liver. So the tumors of these regions causes tumors in the liver. And then arterial spread of tumors is less likely. Why? Because as I already said initially, as the vessel wall of the arteries is very much thick, it will not permit the tumor cells to gain access to that. So it is very much difficult for the tumor cells to gain access into the arteries. But sometimes it may also take place. If it takes place, it will take place in the pulmonary arteries. Why? Because the vessel walls of this pulmonary artery is very thin. So arterial spread takes place only in pulmonary capillary or pulmonary arteries. And cancer of the lung may, however, metastasis by pulmonary arterial route to kidneys. So cancer of this lung, it will may metastasis to kidneys, adrenals, bone, brain with the help of pulmonary arteries. And retrograde spread by blood route may occur at unusual sites due to retrograde spread after venous obstruction. Retrograde is nothing but when there is obstruction by some this tumor, what does it do? It will make another route, and from to that route it will spread. So because of this venous obstruction, just as with lymphatic metastasis, and spread along body cavities and natural passages. And as I said that it also spread through some body cavities and natural passages. So it takes place by different ways. First is transcoelomic spread. So certain cancers invade the serosal wall of the coelomic cavity. So into that cavity it will go and spread. So once the tumor cells is found as a cluster, it will be broken down, and these will again undergo growth and cause a spread in that region. And peritoneal cavity is involved most often compared to pleural and pericardial cavity. So mostly peritoneal cavity is affected compared to peritoneal cavity is mostly involved. Some, but occasionally pleural and pericardial cavities are also involved, but it is very occasional, rare. And then few examples of it include carcinoma of the stomach, excuse me, So few examples of it include yes, carcinoma of the stomach seeding to both ovaries. So from the stomach, if there is any cancer, it will be spread. Seeding is nothing but spreading or sending its nodes, that we call it as seeding, to both ovaries. So that we call it as Krukenberg tumor. And carcinoma of the ovary spreading to entire peritoneal cavity without infiltrating the underlying organs. So sometimes carcinoma of the ovary does it may not uterus or cervix, but it will spread to the complete entire peritoneal cavity. And then pseudomyxoma peritoneum is a gelatinous coating of peritoneum from mucin secreting carcinoma of the ovary or appendix is one more example. And carcinoma of the bronchus and the breast seeding to the pleura and pericardium. So pleura and pericardium are the cavities. So when there is a carcinoma of the bronchus, it may cause seeding into this pleural cavity. If there is it may be in the breast, it may cause seeding into the pleural cavity and pericardium cavity. So it doesn't spread through any vessel walls, but it mainly enters into the surrounding cavity by sending its seeds. So this is what the spread along by body cavities and natural passages. So this, with this we'll be completing our invasion and metastasis. But the mechanism of metastasis will be studying under the heading of biology of cancer biology, or the mechanism of spread. So in that we'll be discussing. So with this our topic is complete. So